I like to start with something funny. And I heard about this pastor. He found a small box hidden in his wife's closet. And he opened it up. And there were 6 eggs and 1,000 $1 bills. And he asked his wife about it. She explained how every time he preached a bad sermon, she put an egg in the box. After 35 years of ministering, he felt pretty good about himself. Only 6 bad sermons. He then asked what the $1,000 was. She said, every time I got a dozen eggs, I sold them for $1. We all have things we're believing for, and dreams to come to pass, and problems to turn around. We're being our best, doing the right thing, but we don't see anything improving. And the scripture says it's through faith and patience that we receive the promise. Sometimes God takes us little by little. The promise is going to happen over time. A process where our character is developed and we're learning to trust Him. But that's not the only way God works. He has these moments of favor where He's going to do things fast. A sudden turnaround, a speedy recovery, a quick work. You didn't see any sign of it. You're just going along, being faithful. God stepped in and hit fast forward. He accelerated what you were believing for. You thought it would take years to pay your house off, but one contract, one phone call, and it happened in a fraction of the time. Or it looked like a long road to recovery in your health, long road to overcome that addiction, but suddenly things changed in your favor. You defied the odds. That wasn't luck, that was the God who moves fast, speeding up what should have taken years. See, the same God that will take you little by little at times will accelerate things. You can't explain it, doesn't make sense, but suddenly He thrusts you ahead. And all the circumstances may say it's going to take a long time to get out of that legal problem, or for your child to get back on course, to meet the right person. What you can't see is God has already lined up these moments where He's going to do a quick work, where suddenly you meet the right person. Suddenly the problem resolves. Suddenly your child comes back home. When you're in a waiting season and you don't see anything improving, it's easy to get discouraged, feel like God has forgotten about you. No, stay in faith. Your time is coming. God sees you doing the right thing when it's hard. He sees you being your best even though you've been overlooked. He hears you thanking Him even though you feel stuck. You are showing God that you trust Him. We all go through these waiting seasons, but here's the good news. Those seasons are not permanent. There is a harvest season coming, a time where God will make things happen fast, a sudden shift. You couldn't make it happen. It's the hand of God speeding things up, moving you into your purpose. And the right attitude is, God, I'm going to trust You in the waiting seasons when You're taking me little by little. But Lord, I believe You have these acceleration moments, these times where You'll do a quick work, a sudden breakthrough that thrusts me into my destiny. This is what happened with Elijah. The Israelites got off course and started worshiping other gods. The king of Israel, Ahab, married a woman from Phoenicia. They worshiped the god Baal. They believed Baal controlled the weather, rain, clouds, and sun. God sent Elisha to King Ahab. Chapter 17, he said, as the Lord God of Israel lives, there will be no rain and no dew on the ground for years. Since they had forsaken Jehovah, there was going to be a drought. Of course, water was a necessity in that area for their crops, for their animals. That's how they survived. God told Elijah to not go back home, but to go to the brook Cherith and live there. It's significant that Elijah was in a drought caused by other people's poor choices. He had to leave his home and hide by the brook because someone else did wrong. And sometimes other people's actions have caused us trouble. We're in a drought because they wouldn't do right. But look at how good God is. God told Elijah to go to the brook and He would command the ravens to feed him there. Even though there was no food, no provision, every morning these ravens brought food in their beaks and dropped it off to him. This was delivery before DoorDash. This was God taking care of his people. I always thought the ravens were the food, that the birds came like quail in the desert, where the Israelites ate the quail. Well, Elijah would eat the ravens, but this was different. The ravens weren't the meal, they brought food to him. When you honor God, he will take care of you. Other people may have put you at a disadvantage. They made choices that caused you trouble and heartache. Now you're in a drought. Don't worry, God will have the ravens find you. He'll provide in a supernatural way. You keep doing the right thing. Keep honoring him when others are compromising, taking the easy way out, worshiping other gods. They're not going to stop your destiny. People are not your source. God is your source. He controls the universe. If he has to have birds bring you food, so to speak, unusual provision, uncommon opportunity, he knows how to take care of you. When Elijah declared this drought, he didn't have time to prepare for it. He couldn't run down to Costco, stock up his shelves. This was a surprise to him, an unexpected storm. When you face things that you didn't see coming, stay in peace. God has you covered. He's going to send ravens your way. He's going to have the provision come to you. David said, I was young and now I'm old and I've never once seen the righteous forsaken. When you honor God, you are connected to a supply line that will never run dry. The economy is not your source. Your company, your boss, sure, we're grateful for employment, but they're not your source. Your 401k, your stocks, no, God is your source. He makes streams in the desert. He brought a coin out of a fish for Peter. He brought water out of a rock, manna in the desert. He knows how to take care of you. And this drought went on, not for a month, not for a year, but for 3.5 years. You never read where Elijah complained, God, why did this happen? He wanted to be out ministering, performing miracles, but he's hiding by the brook. Eventually, he moved to a widow's house where she took care of him. He's in a waiting season, a holding pattern. He's not seeing the promise. He's just being sustained. What you do in the waiting seasons will determine whether you get stuck there or you see God step in and accelerate things. Sitting in that drought, no sign of things changing, Elijah said in verse 41, I hear the sound of an abundance of rain. He heard something in his spirit that contradicted what he saw with his eyes. All the circumstances says there's no rain. You're in a drought. Everything is dead. But faith is believing what you're hearing and not what you're seeing. God will speak things to your heart, but there's no sign of it. All the circumstances say you're not going to get well, but inside you hear, I am restoring health back to you. Your business may be slow. You don't see how you can get ahead, but inside you hear, you will lend and not borrow. It looks like your child's never going to get back on course, but that still small voice says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Now the key is don't let what you see talk you out of what you've heard. You have to believe what God promised you and not what the circumstances are telling you. Elijah went on top of Mount Carmel and began to thank God for rain that was coming, thanking him for something that he couldn't see. He asked his assistant to go to the other side of the mountain to look and see if there were any signs of rain. He came back, no, Elijah, not a cloud in the sky. It's perfectly clear. Elijah didn't say, man, I must have heard God wrong. I don't think this drought will ever end. But we kept believing. He kept praying. He told the assistant to go check again. He went out and came back with the same negative report 6 times. Nothing has changed. Elijah could have let the facts talk him out of it. No sign of rain, been this way a long time. But he had the assistant go check again. On the 7th time, he said, this time, Elijah, I saw a little cloud in the sky, just about the size of a man's hand. That's all Elijah needed, a little sign, a little breakthrough. He told King Ahab, you better get in your chariot and get down this mountain as fast as you can. There's about to be an abundance of rain. Verse 45, the Message translation says, things happened fast. The sky grew black with clouds. There was a mighty rainstorm. Was it like these clouds rolled in over a few days? The weather got a little overcast, more cloudy. Over time, this big storm. No, things happened fast. These clouds didn't drift in, they formed overhead. One moment it was sunny and blue, the next moment there was an abundance of rain. You may have situations where, like Elijah, all the circumstances says, you're not going to get well. You're just like you were a year ago. You're not going to get out of debt or break the addiction. Nothing has changed. You're still single, still have that child breaking your heart, still no closer to your dream. Can I encourage you? Things are going to happen fast. You can't see it coming. There's no sign of it happening. That doesn't mean God is not going to do it. He's going to accelerate the process. He doesn't have to have clouds blow in, the sky get dark a traditional way. It's going to be supernatural, something you can't explain, a sudden breakthrough, a quick work. 2003, the Houston City Council voted for Lakewood to have this facility, the former Compaq Center. It was more than we could imagine, a dream come true. But while we were still celebrating, the company that owns all the property around this building filed a federal lawsuit to try to keep us from moving in. They said we violated the deed restrictions. Our attorneys told us that it could be tied up in the courts for up to 10 years and that there was no guarantee that we would win. The longer they waited, the worse it was for us. There was no reason for them to try to work it out. We had a building that we couldn't do anything with. I'd already told the congregation that it was ours, and people had given funds, and I'd wake up in the night, saying, Joel, you're going to look like a fool. What if you don't win the lawsuit? What if that building sits there for years? We tried to reach out to the other side, but they didn't want to talk. A month went by, 2 months, 3 months, no word. We had this promise in our spirit. We heard abundance of rain, but we didn't see any clouds. No sign of things improving. These are tests. Are you going to give up because the clouds haven't formed? Let the negative reports talk you out of it? There will always be people that try to discourage you and tell you how it's not going to work out. And it's too big, it's too late, the report too bad, you're not qualified. Tune all that out. Don't let them talk you out of what God put in your heart. They didn't hear what you heard. Don't expect them to understand. You have to walk by faith and not by what you see. Let what you heard in your spirit overrule what you see with your eyes. Just because there are no clouds in the sky doesn't mean God is not working. Just because your assistant came in, your cousin, your friend, the expert, and said, it's not going to happen. It's still sunny and blue. You'll never get the building, never get well, never meet the right person. They're telling you what they see, but what they can't see is what God is about to do. What God has coming is not going to be natural. It's not going to make sense. It's not something you can put on paper, calculate, plan. God is supernatural. He can bring rain without clouds, healing without medicine, abundance without the training. One day I received a call from our attorneys saying that the other side wanted to meet. Our attorney said it was probably a distraction, just to bring confusion and we shouldn't talk with them. But something down in my spirit said to do it. I knew we were supposed to meet. The CEO of the company walked in and he came right up to me. He said, Joel, I watch you on television every week, and my son-in-law is a youth pastor. I wasn't expecting that. I thought he was going to say, we don't want you here. We're going to fight you every step of the way. But God is working behind the scenes, lining up the people you need, the breaks you need, the favor you need. What He has purpose for your life, no person can stop. No company, no lawsuit, no sickness, no addiction. God has the final say. We sat down and met that day, and about 4 hours later, he told his attorneys, drop the lawsuit and let them have the building. Not only that, they leased us 9,000 covered parking spaces. Looked like it was going to be tied up for years, but things happened fast. God accelerated the process. You don't know what God is up to in your life. Problems that look like they'll take years to resolve, and dreams that seem like it'll take a lifetime. No, get ready. Acceleration is coming. God is going to speed things up. A sudden shift, a breakthrough, a healing, a turnaround that you couldn't plan. You couldn't explain it. It's the God who moves fast. And yes, I realize there are waiting seasons and these times where God takes us little by little and we don't see anything improving. But that's not how your story ends. God has already lined up these acceleration moments where He'll do in a fraction of the time what should have taken years. If you're in one of those waiting seasons, my challenge is wait in faith. Wait knowing that God controls time, that He can do things fast. You're not falling behind. One touch of God's favor will put you 50 years down the road. When you know this, there's an expectancy. You're thanking Him for what's coming, and you're believing that something good is going to happen. That's what causes God to go to work. But the enemy would love for us to miss these acceleration moments because we talk ourselves out of it. We let other people discourage us. If Elijah would have listened to his assistant and let that negative take root, he wouldn't have seen the abundance. If he would have let his own thoughts discourage him and reason it out, man, there's no clouds, this drought's never going to end, we wouldn't be talking about him. God works where there's faith. Like Elijah, many of you have been faithful in the drought, doing the right thing when nothing's improving, thanking God when you don't see any sign of it. You are on the verge of acceleration. God is about to speed up what should have taken years. Promotion you weren't qualified for. Your business is thrust to a new level. Your health suddenly turns around. You can't explain it. It's divine acceleration. It's the God who moves fast. This is what Isaiah said in chapter 60. The least of you will become 1,000. The smallest, a mighty nation. This is talking about increase, abundance, God exceeding our expectations. But it doesn't say this will happen over a lifetime, normal growth, ordinary promotion. It goes on to say, when it's your time, I will do this quickly. God is saying, I have these moments that I've ordained for you where I'm going to quickly make things happen. You can't reach the fullness of your destiny with just ordinary breaks. Gradual promotion, usual increase. So God says at the right time, if you'll just keep being faithful, you're going to come into these seasons of acceleration. Moments where, like Elijah, you look up and say, wow, that happened fast. There were just no clouds in the sky. My assistant told me 6 times, now out of nowhere, abundance of rain. From drought to a downpour in a moment's time. Looked like this building would be tied up for 10 years, but in 4 hours it was resolved. What you're facing, your health, your family, your finances, may look like it'll always limit you, but you don't know what God is up to. You can't see what He's planning behind the scenes. Stay in faith in the drought seasons, those times of waiting when He's taking you little by little. Isaiah said, when your time comes, God will do it quickly. The least of you will become 1,000. That's acceleration. That's God speeding up things to thrust you into your purpose. I received an email from a lady, and she and her husband had 3 children when she gave birth to her 4th child, a beautiful baby girl. They noticed early on that she wasn't developing like the other children. She barely talked. Other than an occasional mommy, she never said a word. Friends and family were concerned. They told these parents she might be special needs. You need to have her tested. But this mother didn't want to hear that. Her other children were high achievers, excelling in school, and she kept putting it off. Finally, it came time to start preschool, and 4.5 years old, she was tested and had the speaking ability of a 12-month-old baby. Parents were devastated. The mother told how she was paralyzed with fear. They were in a drought, month after month, year after year, and now it was confirmed by the experts, not just slower than normal, but a serious problem. These parents could have fallen apart. God, why did it happen? Instead, all through the day, they kept thanking God that He was working, and they kept thanking Him that their little girl would be able to speak. They kept praise music going on throughout their house. They never missed our services on television. When you're in a drought, it's important what you're feeding yourself. You don't need to hear all the negativity and the naysayers, how it's not going to work out. You need to feed your faith. Feed yourself hope. Meditate on what God says about your situation. When you believe, all things are possible. This little girl was enrolled in special education for speech that new school year. And August went by, nothing happened. Couldn't say a word. September, no better. October, November. Like Elijah, they were praying, believing, but there wasn't a cloud in the sky. No sign of things improving. They just kept thanking God He was working. In April of that next year, she suddenly began to talk. Wasn't gradual, wasn't little by little. All at once, she started speaking like she had been doing it for years. The teachers were baffled. They told the parents that she didn't need speech intervention any longer. My friend Hokalani is here on the front row. She just finished her sophomore year. She's excelling in school. Beautiful Hokalani. That's so awesome. Let me tell you, friends, God knows how to do things fast. He has these acceleration moments. What should have taken years will happen in a fraction of the time. And when you're not seeing anything happening, no clouds in the sky, that's when you have to dig down deep. Say, God, I am not moved by what I see. I believe what I've heard in my spirit, the abundance of rain, healing for my child, freedom from this addiction, this baby I'm dreaming about. When you keep believing and thanking God, despite how long it's taking, that's when God can step in with these acceleration moments where you go from a drought to a downpour. Like Elijah, things will happen fast. This is what Joseph did. He was betrayed by his brothers and sold into slavery. And even though he had done nothing wrong, he found himself in a foreign land, held against his will. He's falsely accused and put in prison. It's one bad break after another. He was in a drought, a long waiting season. He could have been bitter, but he just kept trusting God, believing that He was still in control. One night, the Pharaoh, the leader of the nation, had a dream that he didn't understand. They said there's a prisoner named Joseph that can interpret dreams. The scripture says that Joseph was brought quickly to the palace. One moment he's in prison, another ordinary day, going about his business. The next moment he's standing before the Pharaoh. He interpreted the dream, and the Pharaoh was so impressed, he made Joseph the prime minister, second in command only to him. If you would have told Joseph sitting in the prison, after all the unfair things, people betraying him, being lied about, that tomorrow you're going to be the prime minister. You're not only going to be out of this prison dressed in a royal robe, but you're going to have the Pharaoh's ring representing the authority to do whatever you please. Joseph would have probably said, you lost your mind. That's not possible. But God can make things happen fast. Joseph didn't have to go through a trial, be vindicated by a jury. He didn't have to run for office, have people elect him. God knows how to accelerate your dreams, how to speed things up. What should have taken years, He can do in a fraction of time. You don't know what God is about to do for you. Like Joseph, you've been faithful. You kept a good attitude in the waiting seasons when God was taking you little by little. You didn't see much progress. You didn't complain. You didn't give up on your dream. You passed the test. Now God has some of these acceleration moments for you. Don't believe those lies that you're stuck where you are. It's going to take you a whole lifetime to get out of debt, get well, meet the right person. No, God is going to do things fast. You can't explain it. It wasn't your skill, your intellect, your hard work. It was the goodness of God. Like Isaiah said, taking you from 1 to 1,000, the smallest to a mighty nation. How's this going to happen? God said, when it's your time, I'm going to do it quickly. From a drought to a downpour, and there weren't any clouds. It's easy to go through life being defined by how we were raised, or what we saw modeled growing up, what people have said, or mistakes we've made. We end up wearing these labels: average, not talented, unattractive, too short. This distorted image is keeping us from who God created us to be. How you see yourself will determine how high you will go. And it's possible to live your whole life and never recognize who you really are. The scripture says, before we were formed in our mother's womb, God knew us. Before you showed up on planet Earth, God already decided who you would be. He already laid out a purpose for your life. You came through your mother. She gave you birth, but you came from Almighty God. He gave you life. God didn't create anyone average. He calls you a masterpiece. He put greatness in you. There is potential on the inside that you've not yet tapped into. But if this is going to happen, you can't see yourself as weak, lacking, inadequate. Tune all that out and get in agreement with God. How about seeing yourself as a masterpiece, one of a kind, valuable? Instead of lacking, unqualified, no, I'm equipped, empowered. I have everything I need to fulfill my assignment. Don't let a distorted image of who you are keep you from your purpose. When I was 20 years old, I went to India with my father. It was my first time being overseas. One evening, I was sitting on the beach by myself watching the sun go down. It was so beautiful, almost surreal. Miles of pure white sand, swaying palm trees, glistening blue water. The sun was huge on the horizon, just about to set. I remember the distinct smells, the salt water from the ocean spray, and the smoke from people grilling on the beach, and the marijuana from the hippies getting high. The longer I stayed, the better I felt, but it looked like a postcard. I had never seen anything so magnificent. And the thought came to my mind about how God is such an amazing painter, such an amazing artist. As I was sitting there and just reflecting, thinking about my life, I heard God ask me something, not out loud, but just an impression in my spirit. He said, Joel, you think this is a beautiful picture, do you? I said, yes, God, it's a magnificent picture. He said, what do you think my most prized painting would be? My most incredible creation? I thought about it a moment. I said, God, it must be this. This is beautiful. He said, no, it's not this sunset. Earlier that year, I'd been in the Rocky Mountains, and they were so beautiful. I said, I bet it's the Rocky Mountains. He said, no, it's not that. I thought, what could it be? The Grand Canyon, the Milky Way, the solar system? He said, no, Joel, my most prized creation, the one I'm the most proud of, is you. I thought, me? It couldn't be me. I'm just average. There's nothing special about me. He said, Joel, you don't understand. When I made the solar system, the sun, the oceans, that was all good. I'm proud of that. But when I made you, I breathed my life into you. I created you in my own image. I put my DNA on the inside. Don't discount who you are. Don't let life, people, disappointments convince you that you're just average. Nothing special about you. You have royal blood flowing through your veins. God has crowned you with His favor. He doesn't call the Rocky Mountains a masterpiece. Doesn't call the solar system a masterpiece. He didn't call that magnificent sunset a masterpiece. He calls you a masterpiece. He calls you His most prized creation. Now the question is, what are you calling yourself? If you see yourself as ordinary, not that talented, I don't have a good personality, I'm dealing with these weaknesses. That distorted image is going to keep you from shining. And what a tragedy to go through life and never discover who you really are. Are you wearing labels that are limiting you? Average, not talented, dysfunctional? Who put those labels on you? Who told you that was who you are? Quit letting other people define you and go back to who God says you are. People will tell you you're not good enough, not pretty enough, not smart enough, not talented enough. Why don't you take that label off and put on a new one? Fearfully and wonderfully made. Masterpiece. One of a kind, strong, talented, successful. Judges chapter 6, the Midianites had surrounded the people of Israel. There was a young man named Gideon that was hiding in a wine press. He was afraid and intimidated. While he was hiding, an angel came into the wine press and said, "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." I can imagine Gideon looking around, thinking, who's he talking about? I'm not a mighty hero. I'm afraid. I'm hiding. God was saying, in effect, Gideon, you don't recognize who you are. You're wearing all these labels, insecure, weak, not enough. But I came to tell you who you really are. You're a mighty hero. You have courage, strength, talent that you haven't tapped into. The angel went on to say, you are to lead the Israelites against the Midianites. Gideon answered back, how can I rescue Israel? I come from the smallest tribe, and I'm the least one in my family. Here, God had just called him a mighty hero. He just told him he was going to do something great. But Gideon let how he was raised define him. What family he came from, his education, his size, his perception of who he is keeping him from becoming who God called him to be. If the angel were here today, he would look at you and say, mighty hero, the Lord is with you. But how many of us would do like Gideon? Not me. I'm not a mighty hero. I come from an ordinary family. I'll never do something great. I can't defeat this giant. I don't have the courage, the skill, the expertise. No, don't let your wrong perception keep you from your greatness. Get in agreement with God. Take off all those negative labels, unqualified, wrong family, intimidated. How you see yourself is going to set the limits for your life. And Gideon finally changed his thinking. He got a new image of who he was, and he went out and defeated the Midianites. He saved the people of Israel. But sitting in that wine press, afraid, feeling inferior, he never dreamed we would be talking about him today. He never dreamed he would become a hero of faith. If the angel had not shown up to speak to his destiny, to tell him who God created him to be, he would have lived and died and never discovered who he really was. Maybe God sent me like that angel to tell you who you really are. You are not what people say you are. You're not limited by how you were raised. You're not what your feelings say you are. Your feelings don't always tell the truth. You may feel weak, not valuable, not qualified, but don't let your feelings determine your identity. Feelings are fickle. Feelings will come and go. You have to go back to what your Creator says. He calls you a mighty hero. He calls you a barrier breaker, a giant killer, a masterpiece, a prized possession. I can imagine in the wine press, Gideon praying for God to send a great leader, believing for the right person to show up. God, send us a deliverer. Send us someone strong, talented, with your favor. He didn't realize he was the one he was praying for. He was the answer he was asking God for. Now I wonder if, like Gideon, you're the one you've been praying for. You're the one to do great things, to set a new standard, to take your family to a new level, but perhaps you don't recognize who you are. When we're always looking to others, always counting on someone else, it's because we're overlooking what God put in us. There is greatness in you. There is leadership in you. There is talent, wisdom, creativity. Don't overlook yourself. Don't discount who you are, thinking everyone else is so talented. They can deliver us from this army. They can get me out. They can go further. No, God has destined you to do something awesome. He's destined you to leave your mark. When God told Abraham and Sarah they were going to have a baby, they were both way too old. In the natural, it was impossible. Years went by and no sign of a child. So Sarah told Abraham to sleep with her maid. That way they could have a baby. They had a child through Hagar, but that wasn't the promised child. God said to Sarah, in effect, I didn't put the promise in someone else. I put the promise in you. Sarah was discounting herself. I'm too old. There's no way I can have a baby at this age. That's impossible. As long as she saw herself as barren, not able to have children, she was limiting her destiny. She had to start seeing herself as a mother, seeing that baby in her arms. When she changed her perception of who she was, when she quit counting on other people to make it happen, when she believed I'm the one to give birth to this child, that's when she conceived and gave birth to baby Isaac at 90 years old. God will put promises in your heart that seem impossible. And thoughts will tell you all the reasons it's not going to happen. If you look at it only in the natural, you'll talk yourself out of it. How do you know you're not a Sarah? That God's going to do something out of the ordinary, uncommon? How do you know you're not a Gideon, a mighty hero, someone that will take your family where they've never been? It's easy to think, well, Joel, that's not who I am. That's for someone younger, more talented, more influential, more attractive. No, God put the promise in you, not someone else. You have to do like Gideon. Do like Sarah. Recognize who you are. You're a person of destiny. You're a mighty hero. You have the favor of God. You've been raised up for such a time as this. Don't discount who you are. It's good to celebrate others, but you need to recognize you're gifted. You're talented. You're valuable. You're fearfully and wonderfully made. A friend of mine grew up in a small town in Kentucky, and they were very poor and didn't have too much at all. As a little boy, he always had a desire to help children in need. He saw on television how you could support a hungry child in another country for $15 a month. Well, he didn't have any money, but at 8 years old, he started mowing lawns in the neighborhood so he could help. He had such a burden for these children. Well, by the grace of God, he was able to go to college, and he went on to medical school and became very successful in his practice. All the while, he was still doing what he could to take care of children. One of his medical suppliers heard about it, and they started donating medicines, vaccines, antibiotics. A shoe company donated 100,000 shoes to him. Got so large, he had to rent a warehouse to hold it all. Today, our friends, Dr. Todd and Sue Price, have donated over $1 billion in supplies and medicines to children around the world. He told how from the time he was a little boy, he always prayed that God would send a wealthy person to help those children in need. He said, Joel, I never realized I was the person I was praying for. He was the answer to his own prayer. Sometimes we don't recognize who we are. We have all this potential, these God-given dreams, abilities, but often our circumstances, other people, our own thoughts tell us we're ordinary. We can't do anything significant. So we go through life with little dreams, feeling unqualified, praying that someone else will make a difference. Someone else will push our family forward. I'm saying you're the one that you're praying for. You're the one that can leave your mark. You have greatness in you. You have ideas, creativity. There is favor on your life. There are doors God will open that will thrust you further. You may not see how it can happen. Every voice says, no, you're limited. You're stuck. That giant's too big. That dream is too great. That's okay. That's when God will step in. That's when He'll breathe in your direction, give you favor, ability, blessings that take you where you can't go on your own. It's significant that the angel said to Gideon, mighty hero, the Lord is with you. He could have just said, Gideon, God wants you to go deliver the Israelites. God knew he had to convince Gideon to see himself the right way. He had to help him discover who he really was, a mighty hero. As long as he saw himself as weak, limited, from the wrong family, we wouldn't be talking about him. Don't miss your destiny because you don't recognize who you are. After college, I came back to Lakewood and worked 17 years behind the scenes doing the television production. My father tried many times to get me up to speak, but I didn't think this was in me. I thought I wouldn't know what to say. I can't speak in front of people. I'm too quiet, too reserved. But when my father passed in 1999, I knew I was supposed to step up and pastor the church. I felt it so strongly, but these fears and insecurities came louder than ever, saying, Joel, you don't know how to minister. Nobody's going to listen to you. You're going to get up there and make a fool of yourself. All these voices were trying to push me down, limit my potential, convince me that I wasn't smart enough, talented enough, experienced enough. Like Gideon, I had to make a decision. Am I going to sit here and let my fears and doubts talk me out of stepping up? Or am I going to believe what God says about me, that I'm a mighty hero, that I'm strong in the Lord, that I can do all things through Christ? There was a battle taking place in my mind over who I was going to become. I overheard people talking, he's not as good as his father, it'll never make it with Joel. Was I going to be what people said, what my doubts said, what my feelings said, or was I going to believe I am who God says I am? I'm a masterpiece, I'm valuable, I'm talented, I'm well able. I took that step of faith and never dreamed where God would take me. I thought I knew who I was, but I'm still discovering who I am. I've learned once you think you know, God will take you higher. He'll trust you with more. He's taken you from glory to glory. In the scripture, there was a young man named Mephibosheth. He was the grandson of King Saul, the son of Jonathan, David's best friend. He was born into royalty, destined to one day take the throne. But when he was 5 years old, his grandfather and father were killed in a battle on the same day. After the enemy finished King Saul off, they headed into town to find Saul's family. When Mephibosheth's nurse heard the news, she grabbed him, took off running as fast as she could, trying to spare his life. But as she was going downstairs, she tripped and dropped Mephibosheth. He fell so hard that both of his legs were broken. He became crippled and would never walk again. He ended up living in hiding in a place called Lodabar. It's one of the poorest, most rundown cities of that day. Here he's the grandson of the king. He had grown up in the palace, in royalty, but now he's living in the slums, barely surviving. When we go through disappointments, loss, and bad breaks, it's easy to forget who we are and let that become our identity. I've been dropped, Joel. I've been hurt. I've been betrayed. I have a good excuse to be this way. But what you've been through doesn't change who you are. You are still royalty. You are still a masterpiece. You are still a child of the Most High God. He's promised to give you beauty for those ashes, to pay you back double for the unfair things, but you have to get your passion back. You have to get your vision back. The enemy would love for that one bad break to define you, to where you see yourself as a victim. Nothing good's in my future. Let me just endure life. No, payback is coming. God saw what happened. He saw who left you. He saw what you didn't get. He's a God of justice. He's going to make it up to you. Years went by. Now Mephibosheth is a grown man. One day, King David was thinking about his good friend Jonathan, how much he loved him and how much he missed him. He asked his staff if any of Jonathan's relatives were still alive. They said, yes, he has a son, but he's crippled. David said, go find him. The king's men showed up in the slums of Lodabar, knocked on his door sternly. He's alarmed. He scoots over and opens the door very slowly. When he sees the officials, his heart sinks, thinking, oh man, they finally found me. I'm in big trouble. The main leader says to him, Mephibosheth, the king is looking for you. Can't walk. They have to pick him up and carry him to the palace. Now you can imagine what's going on in his mind. His grandfather, King Saul, tried to kill David, threw spears at David. He chased him through the desert. They bring him before David. The first thing Mephibosheth says is, why would you even bother with a dead dog like me? Notice how he saw himself. Not valuable, unworthy, a victim. I don't deserve anything. Look what I've been through. I'm at a disadvantage. When in reality, he was the grandson of the king. He was royalty. Just because someone dropped him, that didn't change his name. He didn't suddenly not become King Saul's grandson. The problem was he let life change his name. He let that bad break define his identity. He forgot who he was. I can see him trembling with fear, so worried about what David's going to do. But David said to him, in effect, Mephibosheth, I'm not here to harm you. I'm here to remind you who you are. You're royalty. You're the grandson of the king. Your father was my best friend. From now on, you're going to live in the palace with me. Every night you will sit at my table and have dinner. All the land that belonged to your grandfather, I'm giving it back to you. I can see Mephibosheth wiping tears. His face begins to brighten. He can't believe it. He says, you mean I'm not a dead dog? I'm not unworthy? I'm not washed up? David said, no, that's not who you are. You don't belong in Lodabar. You belong in the palace with me. Had David not told him who he was, he would have spent the rest of his life in defeat and mediocrity. Now, I wonder how many of us, kind of like Mephibosheth, have that dead dog mentality. We see ourselves the wrong way. We've been through disappointments. We've made mistakes. Now we think we're not worthy. We can't expect anything good. Can I tell you, the king is looking for you. God sent me down your path to get you out of Lodabar, to remind you who you are. A masterpiece, a mighty hero, a king's child. There's royalty in your blood. There's a crown of favor on your head. Now get rid of that dead dog mentality and start having a child of the king mentality. Worthy, valuable, blessed, abundant, victorious. When my nephew Jackson was a little boy, just a toddler, my sister-in-law Jennifer, Paul's wife, would take him to bed each night. After they prayed, she would go through this long list of superheroes, telling Jackson that's who he was, just to make him feel loved and valuable. She would say, Jackson, you're my Superman. You're my rescue hero. You're my Buzz Lightyear. You're my Lightning McQueen. You're my Power Ranger. On and on. He would lie there and just take it all in. One night, they got home late, and she put him to bed in a hurry and didn't go through the list. In a few minutes, she heard this voice calling loudly, Mama, Mama. She went rushing to his room. Yes, Jackson, what's wrong? He said, Mom, you forgot to tell me who I am. Too many people have never been told who they are. They've had negative voices playing over and over. They believe the lies. You're average. You're not talented. You're unattractive. You'll never do anything great. No, let me tell you who you really are. You're a child of the Most High God. You're beautiful. You're talented. You're strong. You're successful. You're one of a kind, a history maker, a giant killer, a mighty hero. Paul said in Romans 8, the entire universe is standing on tiptoe, yearning to see the unveiling of God's glorious sons and daughters. Paul is saying all of heaven is waiting for you to recognize who you are. They're standing on tiptoe, thinking maybe today they'll get it. Maybe they'll realize they're a masterpiece. They're a mighty hero, a king's son. Maybe today they'll realize they don't belong in Lodabar, that they can step up to the table, that they're royalty. You want to give heaven something to cheer about? See yourself the way God sees you. Quit discounting yourself, thinking you're at a disadvantage, you're lacking. Get out of Lodabar. Get out of that negative mindset and come over into the palace. The king is looking for you. He sent me to help you discover who you really are. See, many of us, like Gideon, we have much more in us, but we're stuck in an old version of who we are. I didn't know this ability was in me, get up and speak in front of people. I was stuck in who I used to be, behind the scenes, doing the production. That version was fine for the time, but it wasn't the final version. There are new versions of you coming that are stronger, wiser, more successful, greater favor. You don't see it all at once. It happens in stages. If you'll stay open, you'll discover a greater version of you. My challenge is don't get stuck in who you used to be. Letting limitations from the past, what someone said, keep you from stepping up to who you really are. This is a new day. I'm calling out the mighty hero, the barrier breaker, the masterpiece. Take off all those negative labels and get in agreement with God. Sometimes we see ourselves at a disadvantage. If we had more talent, then we could do something great. Or if we had more personality, more height, more attractive, then we could accomplish our dreams. Or if we had more funds, more resources, more opportunity, then we could overcome this obstacle. But as long as you see yourself as lacking, at a deficit, you'll make excuses to settle where you are and be less than your best. Psalm 34 says, "Those who trust in the Lord will never lack any good thing." God has given you everything you need for your destiny. He's already put in you the wisdom, the confidence, the strength. He's already lined up the right people, the good breaks, the resources. It's already there. The question is, do you recognize what you have? Are you using what God is giving you, or are you overlooking it because it seems common, ordinary? Are you discounting yourself because you feel shortchanged, too small, wrong nationality, not up to par? You have to change your mindset. It's not enough to just have faith in God. That's important, but you have to take it one step further and have faith in what God has given you. You have to believe that you're equipped, that you're empowered, that your steps are being ordered. And here's the key. You don't have to have great talent to do something great. If you'll use what you have, God will breathe on it, and you'll accomplish more than you thought possible. It's not necessarily the amount of education, the amount of resources, the amount of friends, who you know. What makes the difference is the anointing on your life. You can have average talent, but when God favors you, you'll go further than people with great talent. You can have an extraordinary problem. You're outnumbered, surrounded, but God can take an ordinary solution, something that seems common, and cause you to be victorious. Don't discount what you have. Don't overlook what God has given you. The enemy would love for us to get stuck, thinking we're at a deficit. When I get more funds, more training, more good breaks, then I could move forward. We're waiting for more when in fact everything we need is already there. Look around at what God has given you. Recognize what you have. Moses felt like he was at a disadvantage. He'd been out in the desert for 40 years, hiding because of a mistake. And God came to him in a burning bush and told him to go tell the Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. They'd been in slavery for many years. Moses said, God, he's not going to listen to me. I don't have any influence, the right credentials. I'm not a good speaker. I stutter. He went on and on, making all these excuses. God said to him, Moses, what do you have in your hand? Moses said, God, it's nothing. It's just a stick, just a piece of wood I got off a tree. I've been using as a staff for my animals. God said, throw it on the ground. He threw it down and it turned into a snake. God took something Moses had that seemed common, ordinary, nothing special, but God breathed on it and it became extraordinary. There are things that God has put in your life that seem common, normal talent, normal neighborhood, normal job. It's ordinary to us, but when God steps in, supernatural things happen. When Moses saw that snake, verse 3 says, he was so terrified that he took off running. You would think he'd be so amazed and so inspired that he'd be full of faith. It's just the opposite. God told him to pick the snake up by the tail. Took a lot more faith to pick it up than to throw it down. When he did, it turned back into his staff. God was showing him that he had what he needed. It looked ordinary, insignificant, just a stick. But if it needs to be a key to open a door, God will turn it into a key. If it needs to be a shield to protect you, God will turn it into a shield. If it needs to be provision to fund your dream, God will turn it into a bank. If it needs to be an auditorium to expand your church, God will turn it into a compact center. Anytime you tell God that you're stuck, you're at a deficit, you're lacking, God asks the question, what's in your hand? What are you discounting? What are you overlooking? Joel, I don't have the talent, the training, the connections. I'm limited in my career. Well, just keep being faithful, using what you have. God will take the ordinary and do something extraordinary. You do the natural, and God will do the supernatural. Jesus told his disciples to roll away the stone, and I'll raise Lazarus. Jesus could have rolled away the stone. He's God. He spoke to the storm and calmed the winds. Why did he tell his disciples to do it? It's this principle. If you'll do the ordinary, God will do the extraordinary. If you'll do what's common, God will do what's uncommon. If you'll throw down the staff, so to speak, he'll turn it into what you need. When my father went to be with the Lord, I knew I was supposed to step up and pastor the church, but I didn't feel qualified. I didn't have the training, never ministered before. On top of that, my father was such a great minister. He was strong, dynamic, had a big personality, and I was just the opposite. All those thoughts told me, Joel, you're not enough. You're not like your father. Here's the key. You don't need what someone else has. You're not running their race. You have what you need for your race. Don't compare yourself to other people. If you're focused on what they have, their gifts, their looks, their resources, you're going to start discounting yourself. Thinking, man, I can't speak like my father, or I'm not as attractive as my cousin, or my coworker is so much more talented. If you needed what they have, God would have given it to you. You're not lacking anything you need to fulfill your purpose. And I was tempted to shrink back and feel less than because my father was such a gifted leader. I had to do what I'm asking you to do. I said, God, I don't have what my father had, but I believe I have what I need for my destiny. And I'm not going to compare myself to him. I'm going to take what you put in my hands, my gifts, my personality, my smile, and use it to the best of my ability. I started speaking week after week, and I didn't really know how to write a message. And I didn't have deep theology. I just talked about the goodness of God and how to live a life of victory. People started telling me, Joel, you have a gift. You have such a good way of explaining the Scripture and making it relevant. And that always puzzled me. I would think, what are they talking about, having a gift? I'm just up there talking. What felt ordinary to me, God breathed on, and it became something much greater. Never dreamed I'd be a pastor and speaking to people around the world. When you look at what you have, your skills, talents, personality, it's easy to think, this is ordinary. It's just a walking stick. That's what God uses. There's something He's given you that's going to take you to new levels. It's not spectacular, it's ordinary. Don't discount it. Don't go around with a disadvantage mentality. Use what you have, and He'll take the natural and do something supernatural. Moses spoke to the Pharaoh, and eventually he let the Israelites go. But as they were leaving, he changed his mind, and he sent 600 of his most skilled warriors and all these chariots to capture them and bring them back. Moses and the Israelites came to a dead end at the Red Sea. They had nowhere to go. The people started complaining, Moses, why did you bring us out here in the desert to die? We'd rather stayed in Egypt as slaves than come out here and be killed. Moses was praying, God, do something supernatural. Send an army to rescue us. Rain down hail upon them. God said in verse 16, Moses, Why are you crying out to me? Lift up your rod, stretch forth your hand and part the sea. I can hear Moses saying, God, you mean you want me to do something ordinary? You're going to use this stick again? This common thing? You want me to lift it up? When he did, the waters began to push back. The Red Sea parted. The people went through on dry ground. We're looking for the spectacular, but often it starts with something ordinary, something we could easily discount, think it's common. What do you have in your hand? I'm just a business person. I'm just a student. I'm just an architect. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'll never do anything significant. That's how Moses felt out there in the desert 40 years. But God has put something in your hand, something that seems ordinary. If you'll dare lift up your rod, do what He's asking you to do, you're going to come into these destiny moments where you see Red Seas part, deliverance from enemies, gifts come out that you never knew you had. It's in you. God put it there before you were born. He marked you for greatness. He already set the time for you to break out to levels you've never dreamed. Now you have to get in agreement with Him. This is not going to happen if we have a lack mentality. I don't have the talent. It's too big. Joel, I got a Red Sea in front of me right now, a dead end. What do you expect me to do? Lift up your rod. Do the natural and God will do the supernatural. He'll breathe on your life in a new way. This is what happened with Samson. He was surrounded by the Philistines, a huge army. He had no weapons, no protection. All the odds were against him. He looked around to try to find something to defend himself. All he could find was the jawbone of a donkey, some dead bones. I'm sure he thought, oh, great. God, I need a sword. I need a shield. I need some troops to come rescue me. But all I have is this jawbone. It was common. A lot of dead animals out in the desert. He could have ignored it and thought, well, that's of no use. But he was smart enough to realize it was a part of his destiny. What you need to accomplish your assignment will always be within reach. It won't be far off where you can't attain it. It will be close to you. Pay attention to what God brings across your path and who He brings across your path. It's not there by accident. It's easy to discount, think, oh, that's common, that person, that opportunity, this idea. It's just a stick, Joel. It's just the jawbone of a donkey. God uses the ordinary to do the extraordinary. If you'll recognize what you have and be a good steward, then you'll see what God was up to. Samson picked up that jawbone. The scripture says the Spirit of God came upon him and he defeated 1,000 Philistines. One man, not with a rifle, not with an army, not with fire coming down from heaven, but with something ordinary, a jawbone of a donkey. What God is going to do in your life won't always happen through spectacular ways. Maybe some of that, but most of the time, God is going to use something ordinary, something within reach, something close to you. God asked Moses, what do you have in your hand? Not what do you wish you had, Moses? What does your neighbor have? What are you hoping for that's far off? There is something close to you. It's easy to overlook. It's easy to discount, but God put it there. It's instrumental in you reaching your destiny. There was a young woman named Mary Bethune, born in South Carolina in the late 1800s. She was the youngest of 17 children. Her parents were slaves. Despite the odds being against her, she was able to get a good education and even attend college. And from the time she was a little girl, she always had a dream to teach young people. And after getting her degree, she sent her application to different schools, hoping to get a teaching position. She was a straight-A student. You couldn't meet a finer young woman. She waited month after month. Unfortunately, no one would hire her. She was disappointed, but she knew that God still had a plan, that when one door closes, that God will always open another door. Rather than sitting around defeated, she decided to start her own school. She didn't have any desk, but she did have some cardboard boxes. She set them up as desks. She didn't have any pens, but she did have some red berries out in the field. Every night she would drain the juice so the students could use that for ink in their pens. After several years, the local college saw what was happening. They asked her to join her school with theirs. It became the Bethune-Cookman College. She went on to become the first African-American college president. Now, in the natural, Mary was at a deficit. She was lacking a poor family, turned down for the position, no equipment, no funding. That didn't stop her. What she needed was within reach. If it's out of reach, you don't need it. If you can't attain it, it wasn't meant to be. Don't sit around in self-pity. God has something better. He said, because you trust Him, you will not lack. And if you needed it for your destiny and it was out of reach, God wouldn't be a just God. Let go of what didn't work out and who didn't stay in your life, the promotion you didn't get, how you weren't raised right. None of that has stopped your purpose. Nothing you've been through has canceled your assignment. No bad break has lessened your greatness. What you need is close to you. Recognize what you have. May seem common, just some cardboard boxes, just the jawbone of a donkey, just this stick, this rod. Yes, but when you use it, Red Seas part. Enemies are defeated. Doors will open. Opportunity that thrusts you into your destiny. What's in your hand? Is there something you're overlooking? It seems ordinary, but when you do the natural, God will do the supernatural. When you set up the cardboard desk, when you drain the ink, God will bring the college president position more than you can imagine. John chapter 6, a great crowd had followed Jesus to a remote area to hear Him teach. And getting late in the day, almost dark, Jesus said to His disciples, you need to feed the people. They're too tired to go home hungry. They said, in effect, are you kidding, Jesus? There are 15,000 people here. We're out in the desert. The nearest Walmart's 300 miles. It's Sunday. Chick-fil-A is not even open. They came up with all these good reasons why it was impossible. Jesus asked them, what do you have? They went out in the crowd and came back in a few minutes and said, all we could find was this little boy's lunch, just 5 loaves of bread, 2 fish. But what is that among so many? That was a logical question. What good is this one lunch going to do when we need lunch for 15,000 people? But God doesn't ask you to figure out how it's going to happen. He just asks you to use what He's given you, to not discount it, to not live thinking you're at a deficit, but to believe that He can take what seems small and make something great out of it. Same thing when I stepped up. My mind said, what is this among so many? God, all I have is 5 loaves and 2 fish. We need something much greater, more talent, more wisdom, more training. God is not asking you for what you don't have. He's asking you to trust Him with what you do have, with what's in reach. Joel, all I have is a little lunch. God can take the little and multiply it. I just have a little faith. A little faith can move a mountain. I just have a walking stick. You can part a Red Sea. I just have the jawbone of a donkey, something I found close. You can defeat an army. You can beat the cancer. You can break the addiction. You're not lacking. You have exactly what you need. And sometimes on purpose, God will let you be outnumbered. He'll let the door close, let you not feel qualified for the position. He takes that small and breathes on it. Jesus prayed over the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and they multiplied, and they fed all 15,000 people, plus they had 12 baskets full left over. But the disciples almost talked themselves out of it, thought they were at too big of a deficit. But the deficit is a sign that God's about to do something amazing. Now, many of you have been faithful with what God has given you. Going to church, doing more than you have to, going to work, serving, giving, believing. you're going to come in to some of these destiny moments where you see God breathe on your talent and you rise to a new level. Breathe on your finances and you come into overflow. Breathe on your health, that cancer is gone. Breathe on your children, they're back on track, fulfilling their purpose. Don't be fooled by the facts. Every circumstance may say you're at a deficit. You just have 5 loaves and 2 fish. You're lacking talent, lacking funds, lacking confidence. No, your time is coming. You keep doing the natural, using what you have, God's going to step in and do the supernatural and take you where you can't go on your own. I talked to a man, he's an attorney, and he always had a desire to be in the sports industry, but he didn't know anyone in that field. And he was living in a small town where he was raised and working there. And several times a week, he'd go up to the gym to play basketball. And he'd played with this same group of men for a few years. And one day, this older gentleman asked him what he did for a living. And he told how he was an attorney doing corporate law. But he said, my dream is to be a sports agent. I just don't have any connections. The man said, that's interesting. My nephew is the #1 college football player in the nation. He was just asking me about who I knew that could represent him. I'm going to have him call you. That was his first sports client. His business grew and grew. Today, he's one of the top sports agents in the world. He said, Joel, I never dreamed I would be where I am. Seemed like he was lacking, didn't know anyone, in a small town. Then that one good break, that one connection. You don't know what God is up to. You don't know the doors He's about to open, the people you're about to meet, the favor you're about to see. It may seem like you're at a deficit. What's in your heart is much bigger than you think could ever happen. Just stay faithful where you are. Keeping God first place, being your best with what He's given you. You're going to come into your destiny moments where suddenly the Red Sea parts. You're doing the ordinary and God steps in and does the extraordinary. You're gathering the 5 loaves and 2 fish, not complaining, not discounting it. Then God multiplies it, gives you supernatural increase, supernatural provision. The right people show up, favor that you can't explain. 2 Kings chapter 4, there was a widow that was trying to survive. Her husband had served with the prophet Elisha, but he had passed and he left her some funds to live off on, but she'd used all that up. Now she didn't know how she was going to make it. In those days, if you couldn't pay your debts, they would take your family members and they would have to work for the payment. Well, these creditors were coming for her 2 sons. She was so distraught. She went to the prophet Elisha to explain what was happening. Elisha said to her, what do you have in your house? Verse 2, she answered, nothing at all. She was saying, we're done. It's over. There's nothing here. Then she thought about it and said, wait a minute. Nothing except a small jar of oil. Elisha said, that's all we need. Just a little oil. He told her to go out and borrow as many large empty containers as she could find. She and her sons went out and knocked on the neighbor's door, and they brought back all these containers. Elisha said, now take the little oil that you have and pour it into the empty containers. That didn't make sense, but she obeyed. As she did, the oil never ran out. God multiplied it. She kept pouring and pouring until all the containers were filled. She went out and sold the oil, paid off all her debts, and had plenty to live on. But when Elisha asked her what she had in her house, at first she said, nothing at all. She discounted the oil. It was too small, not significant. But the truth is, that's all God needed. She was looking on the outside, hoping Elisha would save her. But what she needed was on the inside. It was within reach, in her house, but it was common, ordinary, just a little oil. This can't do any good. I've got a big problem. But when you use what you have, God will breathe on it. And some of us are like this woman. What do you have in your house? I don't have anything, Joel. I'm not that talented. I don't have a good personality. I've got an okay job. It's nothing. If you only knew what God can do with a little jar of oil, a little boy's lunch, a little faith, a little talent. God asked Moses, what's in your hand? He said something ordinary. He asked this woman, what's in your house? She said nothing at all. Both times they had what they needed, they just didn't recognize it. Moses had a rod that would part a sea, a stick that we'd be talking about thousands of years later. This widow had a little jar of oil that would sustain her for years until the famine was over. What's in your hand? What's in your house? What you need is close to you. It's within reach. You are not lacking. You are not at a deficit. You are in position to see the hand of God do something supernatural. Now do your part and give him the 5 loaves and 2 fish, even though it seems insignificant. Pour the little jar of oil. Lift up your rod. Small acts of obedience lead to great miracles. No more thinking, I'm at a disadvantage, I'm lacking. Turn it around. I have everything I need. I'm equipped, empowered, and anointed.